Okay, so hi everybody. I apologize in advance. You might have a little bit of background noise, and we might be interrupted by my kids, but I could not set myself up in a quiet place on a Sunday. So yeah, I'm David Baelde. I'm one of the original developers and founders of Liquidsoap. I left the project. I mean, I'm still officially in it, but in reality, I'm inactive since about 2012. But Sam and Romain asked me to talk about my experience and talk about the past of Liquidsoap. So I'm happily doing this now. Sam, how do I switch like this?
At the bottom,
okay.
Yeah, it seems you've got it.
Good, let's go. So I talk about the history of the first 9 years or so of Liquidsoap, and I'll try to perhaps make a few useful reflections. I'm not sure about that, but we'll see. So as Sam told quickly already, it all started with a small net radio project in the computer science school where Samuel and myself were. So back in 2003, we had for the first time, at least as far as I'm concerned, access to unlimited high-speed internet. And we discovered that we could do all sorts of magical things with it. In particular, Samuel and myself had this idea that, hey, we can actually do a net radio. And in addition, because, well, we were programmers and we were particularly passionate about coding in OCaml, we decided to code the web radio, the net radio. I'm sorry, but in French we say web radio, so I will confuse the two words often. So we decided to code it ourselves in OCaml. So in 2003, we started running Geek Radio for the computer science students of the school. So we would listen to a lot of techno music at night while coding the next iteration of the project or doing homeworks and stuff like that. At this time, there was no question of user scripts. It was just ourselves coding the radio in OCaml. And we were actually not dealing with samples. We were just sending the compressed files to Icecast. So it's essentially doing easy stream or ICs on our own. But the next year, we got an opportunity to expand the project a lot because we had to do a software project at school. So we expanded this idea into a project for 20 students. And this was the birth of Liquidsoap. So one thing we did really well at the time is to invent a fun name. So first there was the name Savonet for the project. Few of you, I guess, know that it means, so Sav is a contraction of Samuel and David, and net is for net radio. And so as part of the Savonet project, which means a soap block in French, we had the Liquidsoap streaming engine. And I'm really delighted to see all the new projects with funny names following the theme. So this is a big success of the project, in my opinion. And so, yeah, so this was the birth of Liquidsoap, almost as you know it. At the core of Liquidsoap, there was already a streaming model allowing operators to manipulate audio at the sample level, but also to take into account tracks to do, fallbacks, switches, rotations, all sorts of things like this. That model has stayed almost untouched for almost 20 years, and it's only for this 2.0 version that Romain and Samuel are planning that it is actually being enriched to support streaming compressed data. It was already planned that the streaming engine could work from both local and remote files. It already had queues, requests, dynamic queues and stuff like that. And we already had the idea of allowing users to specify their radio, in a flexible way using scripts and to interact with it using the Telnet server. So the basic, the basic ideas were already there. The goal around this streaming engine was to add a lot of other tools that would interact with the streaming engine to create a community radio for our community of computer science students exchanging music files over the campus network. So among the other components of the project, we had a tool that is now completely dead for discovering audio on the campus network and indexing it. We had an IRC bot for, requesting specific songs using over IRC. And an important part of the project was to develop OCaml bindings, because the OCaml programming language was seldom used for multimedia streaming. And so we had to import to create connections between OCaml, the OCaml language, and all the C libraries that were needed to decode MP3 files, efficiently perform maybe sample rate conversions and stuff like that. So this was the Savonet project we proposed at school and that we did over year 2004. So we did it for fun, but I think we did it quite seriously and we put a lot of good ideas in it. So I thought that this quote was quite aptly describing what we did at the time. So for those of you who don't read French, it says that it's better to use your intelligence on fun things. Connery is not exactly fun, but it's hard to translate and it's not very polite. It's better to use your intelligence on fun things than to use your dumbness on serious things. Right. And this is from Jacques Rouxel, the creator of a famous old French cartoon called Les Shadocks. So one thing that I want to discuss a bit more about the Liquidsoap is the choice of the OCaml programming language. So from a sociological perspective, it was an obvious choice for Samuel and myself, because OCaml is the language that is used primarily for teaching computer science to the kind of students that we were in France. So we just took the language that was given to us. It's actually a little bit more complex than this, because I was also a C programmer. We both knew a lot of programming languages, but we were falling in love with OCaml at that time, so we chose OCaml. More broadly, OCaml is a language that originated in academic communities. It's mainly used to write systems dealing with logic, with verifying software, scientific computing, and not so often multimedia programming. But the language was gaining traction in industry, and it already had a lot of non-academic applications. For example, file sharing applications, web programming. So we knew it was possible to do anything with the language, as with any language. But it was a strange choice because it required from us a lot of work, and in particular from Samuel, because Samuel was the one working most on all these OCaml bindings to import all the stuff from C to OCaml. From a technical perspective, it was a very good choice. It's a language that allows many styles of programming. It's often presented as a functional language, but it also allows imperative programming, object-oriented programming. And we used all these features to structure Liquidsoap in relevant ways. The design of Liquidsoap, it was not stable until a few years after 2004, but it has remained quite stable since then, quite robust. The language has rich static types. What this means is that it's often considered as inaccessible to a lot of programmers. It has a steep learning curve, right? At the beginning, you need to suffer a little bit to learn it, but then you benefit from this richness. The language helps you to avoid a lot of errors. OCaml compiles to fast native code, which is a good thing for writing a streaming engine. and it is garbage collected, which for many people will be surprising, because garbage collection means that sometimes the runtime stops and analyzes memory usage to free unused, unnecessary stuff. So this is good because it means you almost cannot have memory leaks, but for real-time applications, it can be a bit shocking. In practice, the garbage collector is really fast, and Liquidsoap does not often need to be that real-time, so it has never been a problem. So a few years after that, Samuel and myself were doing PhDs in the Parisian area, and in the place where I was doing my PhD, I met Romain. So Romain was a student from another engineering school, Central Paris, and he was actually running the radio, the student radio there, which is called RadioPi and is now dead. And he was both running the infrastructure and running some shows, taking care in particular of the reggae shows. So for us, for Samuel and myself and the other people who were involved in the project at the time, this was a big thing. So when I met Romain, he got excited about Liquidsoap, and he decided to switch his radio production system to Liquidsoap. And for us, it was a big thing because unlike the radio that we had been running, Geek Radio, RadioPi was publicly streaming over the internet and legally so. So it was a more real radio than what we had. And we were happy that our software could be used for real radio. The other important thing, of course, is that as part of, after migrating RadioPi to Liquidsoap, Romain started hacking in Liquidsoap, and he quickly became one of the 3 developers and the lead developer now. So this is a very important step in the history of Liquidsoap. So I won't enter into too many technical details, but to give you an idea of how things went, in 2004, we had this cool project. So at the time, the overall architecture was there. The scripting language was much more basic, and things were not working. Things were really not working because we did not have time to fix all the bugs. We had a lot of fun bugs due to the difficulties of C bindings. So we had memory corruptions. So you would listen to a song and boom, in the middle of the song, suddenly memory areas from another song would play. So it was a bit unpredictable. In 2005, we managed to have something stable. The 0.2 version was the first stable version. It had OCaml-like syntax for user scripts, which is uncommon, well, which would have been uncomfortable for many users. And the scripts were first order. So to put it simply, in the scripts, you could only define sources and then compose new sources from operators. So this is what you do all the time in Liquidsoap scripts, but today you do a lot more things. And this only appeared in the next iteration. In the 0.3 version in 2006, we switched the language to a new syntax, the syntax that you have today, that is more familiar for most people. And the language became higher order. So this means that this means that the language allowed the definition of new function and the passing of functions as arguments of other functions. So the big motivation, one of the big motivations for us at the time was to have transitions. So an operator could apply transitions to a string, and a transition is something which explains how you transform a string to another one. So in other words, it's a function from a source to a source. So we were really proud about this evolution of the language, where we could put to use some of the relatively high-level concepts that we learned at school and apply them in the context of radio. We were proud of that. A few years later, some more important changes happened. The 0.9 version in 2009 brought external encoders. So we started adding the ability to use external programs to encode data. Well, there were a lot of new things. We had much more richness to the way we could interact with Icecast. Maybe Harbor was already created. And Samuel, I think it was mostly Samuel. He brought some experimental video support to Liquidsoap. So it was not very efficient at the time, but it could still run. It could run, so we were impressed by this. But it was different from today because when each Liquidsoap instance could either be audio, and it could either be all audio sources, or more specifically, all mono audio sources, or all stereo audio sources, or all video sources. You could not have a mix of video here, mono audio here, stereo audio there. In 2011, we opened up the possibility for such mixes. So we had the possibility to have heterogeneous content over the pipelines. And we also incorporated the notion of clocks to allow for different time scales, which turned out to be important in some particular applications. For example, if you connect a sound card to a Icecast server, you might realize that their clocks, their internal clocks, are not ticking at the same pace. So we had a lot of fun creating the concepts to take this into account in the streaming model and allow clock adjustments as operators in our streaming model. So these high-level concepts like high-order programming, transitions, clocks, actually motivated the publication of 2 academic papers. So first by Samuel and myself on the high-order scripting language and its use for transitions. And then also with Romain in 2011, we published a paper on essentially the new concepts of Liquidsoap 1.0. So this is the ivory tower part of the Liquidsoap history. Of course, there is that's only a small fraction of the story. The success of Liquidsoap and the possibility of its application to actual, real radios is due to a lot of work on incorporating tons of technologies. So I listed, yeah.
Well, this is great. Well, it's muted, but I don't need to,
2 seconds. I just wanted to say,
Is it a question? No? Okay.
I think it was a mistake.
Okay, good. But feel free to interrupt me if, for any reason. I mean, I don't mind. So yeah, I was saying, as part of this history, there was really a lot of hacking, incorporating tons of technologies for fun or for good reasons. Samuel had a lot of fun integrating LO and OSC for creating all sorts of interactive setups with Liquidsoap. Samuel and Romain spent a lot of time trying to find the right way to support so many audio formats that exist. And Romain talked about maybe FFmpeg bringing an end to this quest. Romain worked a lot on Harbor, RTP support, WebSockets, and so on. It's really a big, a huge work that they are doing. I did not do so much of that, so I'm almost, I can say it from outside. A big thank you for that. There is also a lot of work. There was and still is a lot of work for interacting with external tools to talk to a scheduler, to talk to a logger, to interact with the end user radio system. And as usual with software systems, a lot of work to robustly handle all the possible failures that can happen, all the unexpected situations that can come up. If you look at I did the exercise of looking at the change logs for the past 20 years of Liquidsoap, and I could identify a few high-level concepts. And this is my previous slide, but summarizing all the stuff that happened in these themes is impossible, at least for me. I mean, if almost every year you see that we work some more on supporting deconnection, reconnection, allowing better ways for users to specify how they want Liquidsoap to behave in this and that case. Another thing that was very important in the development of Liquidsoap is communicating with users. So this time I can say that I helped from the beginning. We made big efforts, and I'm quite proud of my idea to automatically produce documentation from the code. So this helped us have an up-to-date reference documentation from the beginning. In addition to this, we developed several tutorials. Romain had the idea of publishing one of these tutorials as an article in the Linux magazine, the French Linux magazine. And of course, we had a really intense activity on the mailing list, which was, I think, crucial to get many people on board at the beginning. So due to all of this, we met a lot of people. We met a lot of, we discovered a lot of projects, really interesting people looking for help, bringing new ideas, sometimes contributing to Liquidsoap. And this led to several years of fun memories, really good memories. So I will list a few random examples. So we met Balbinus, who I don't think is around, and Gilou, who is around quite early on. Balbinus was another French student, and he was toying with Liquidsoap. One of his projects was to create a number station using Liquidsoap. So it's an idea inspired by the history of spying. So you can look up number stations on Wikipedia if you don't know what it is. And Balbinus was also the first external contributor to Liquidsoap, the first non-developer to actually contribute some code. Balbinus and Gilou were important for us, I think, because they were working with actual FM radios. So this was another step towards, we realized that we could do some serious stuff. I mean, it started from almost a joke, and we realized that it could actually be useful to radios, to normal radios. I have fond memories of explaining programming language concepts to, in particular, the guy who was running the Subflow net radio on our mailing list. I can say personally that I'm quite proud of having brought the Liquidsoap scripting language to everyday people who don't know that disguised under this scripting language, they are using some of the most advanced programming language technologies that exist. Okay. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's really much richer than your average programming language. I mean, we can discuss whether it's a good idea or not to have our own programming language and not something more usual. But for me, it's been a really interesting experience. We also ran net radios ourselves. In particular, for several years, we ran some net radio called Dolbrai, try to promote libre music with an old friend of mine called Franck Rousseau. And we met people, running normal web radios, student radios, community radios for a parish or whatever. And also some less usual projects. So I have two examples here that I particularly remember. So two artists in France reached out to us at some point. I won't name them because they did not name Liquidsoap in their final project. So this is my vengeance. Two artists came to us and they had this idea that they wanted to stream Silence to Tokyo and then back to Paris. And they wanted to be able to hear the distortions of the sound that could result from this trip. The problem is they had no idea about technology. And they did not realize that if they stream MP3 over TCP, there would be no distortion at all because the protocol corrects the errors. So we created a UDP protocol just for them, just so they could have errors and they could listen to the errors. So after several loops from Paris to Tokyo and back, some packets are lost. And then you decode and re-encode over MP3 and it starts producing some funny glitches. Another interesting project that I remember fondly is some guy told us that he had a rig on a desert island where he just recorded the sound of birds and the wind, and sometimes he had some internet connectivity and he would stream the current recording to the land. And most of the time, he was just saving the recordings. So this sort of setup is highly unusual. And of course, he could only turn to Liquidsoap to do it. So I was quite happy to see that we made this possible. Of course, we eventually met with the people at Source Fabric doing airtime. And in particular, we worked a lot with Martin Konechny. And eventually we met them when they invited us to their On2 festival in Berlin in 2010. So this was another step for us towards becoming more professional. So in fact, I considered at some point leaving academia and perhaps working for Source Fabric and other people. It did not happen for me, and it did not happen for any of Romain, myself, and Samuel for several years. And only recently did Romain start developing Liquidsoap as part of a professional activity. So to conclude my talk, it went quite well. Not a lot of people can, 20 years later, see that their pet project from student years is still something useful to many cool projects. So of course I'm quite proud of myself and Romain and Samuel. I'm also very grateful to Romain and Samuel, but of course Romain is particularly for keeping the project alive, and to all of you for doing so many cool things with it. So some keys to the success is, well, a cool name, having found a niche where there were not too many tools existing, and in particular, no tool that was as flexible as what we built. We put some nice ideas in there. We have this unusual scripting language. We use higher order programming, static types in the scripts. We have a streaming model, concept of clocks and things like this. But perhaps even more importantly, we put a lot of work. And I say we, but Romain and Samuel are to be thanked in particular for all the work, all the grunt work to make things actually be useful. So one reason why it went well, one reason why we did it in the first place and why it is still going well is that radio still feels like magic. So when we started the project, internet was almost new to us. I mean, for me, unlimited access to internet was new. And all the things you could do is it felt like magic. I'm amazed to see that today, despite the widespread use of internet and the birth of systems like Spotify, podcasts, and all many alternatives to radio. Radio is still a media that works for people and that still gets communities motivated to build stuff. So this is great. Like we said before, a lot of sub-projects of the Savonet projects are dead. Essentially, Savonet, I think, is mainly Liquidsoap today and a few OCaml bindings. J'ai pas fini, Alex. No. The Liquidsoap is dead, but shower gel is alive. So it's better like this. Like I said before, it's better that Liquidsoap does its job and interfaces well with other projects doing the other parts of building radios and TV channels or whatever, or weird artist rigs. And one thing I think is, well, Samuel and myself were really proud to introduce higher order programming to be able to specify transitions as part of the scripting language. But in the end, my guess is that this is not used very often, and that the higher order part of the scripting language is much more often used to allow users to specify event handlers and specify rich ways in which the Liquidsoap script is supposed to interact with external systems. And this is probably more important to the success and the flexibility of Liquidsoap today. I used to worry a lot about the lack of contributors, and perhaps I thought that perhaps choosing OCaml was an error because, well, there are relatively few OCaml developers around. I'm probably wrong about this. To some extent, we are lucky that Samuel and Romain are still active. I left. I'm glad Samuel did not, and Romain particularly did not, and even managed to make a professional activity out of it. Without that, the project would perhaps be dead. I hope that in the future, a lot of people will be able to contribute to the project, not to the OCaml part, probably, but if scripting becomes the norm for creating new operators, then community contributions should be much easier. So this is perhaps the key to a bright future for the project. That's all I had to say. Feel free to ask questions. And big thanks to Samuel and Romain for running the project and running the workshop.
Thank you very much, David. Yeah, it was really nice to see all this history. Yeah. If I can make a comment on my side, please, please come back.
Well, I would love to, but there are too many things that I would love to do, and I cannot do everything. So, well, I don't know. It could happen, but.
Okay.
And by the way, I wanted to say hi to Xavier Cazin. I forgot you, but you are here, Xavier, in that picture. And this is Balbinus, by the way. So it's good to see some of the old friends. Ah, actually, Xavier has left. Not the right time to mention him. Okay.
Okay, so are there any questions about like this early part of history about Liquidsoap?
Will Liquidshop 2 be in a bar? It was more fun in a bar than online.
Yeah, I guess so.
But then, of course, it was also way less international. So that's a big advantage.
Okay. So thank you. If there is no more questions, I think we can all thank again David for this this great talk. Yeah, it was really fun to hear back about all these histories.
Well, I hope it was also a little bit interesting for, well, yeah. It was not only fun memories for ourselves, but anyway, that's what I had to say.
Yeah, thank you very much.